Absolutely. Here's a dramatic, 1,600-word YouTube article on the evolution of the Pontiac GTO leading to its 1984 second-generation rebirth, written without headings and perfect for a voiceover or cinematic script. In the heart of American muscle car history, few names carry the raw, thunderous legacy of the Pontiac GTO. It was never just about horsepower, it was about attitude, rebellion, and rewriting the rules of what a car could be. It was the machine that defined a generation of power-hungry thrill-seekers, roaring to life in the 1960s and burning rubber across every corner of the culture. But like all legends, its road wasn't always smooth. By the time 1984 rolled around, the world had changed, and so had the GTO. This is the story of how a once dominant street king evolved, adapted, and fought to stay alive in a world that was trying to leave muscle behind. When the GTO first arrived in 1964, it didn't just turn heads, it ignited a firestorm. Born from a loophole in General Motors' policy that banned racing, the GTO was essentially a mid-size Pontiac Tempest outfitted with a massive 389 cubic inch V8 and enough torque to shame sports cars twice its price. It became an instant icon, the grandfather of all muscle cars, and by the late 1960s, it had cemented itself as the street-legal symbol of American performance. The late 60s and early 70s saw the GTO reach its peak with massive engines like the 400 and 455 Ho, aggressive styling, ram air packages, and drag strip dominance. But that golden era couldn't last. Insurance premiums rose, emissions regulations tightened, fuel crises shook the industry. The muscle car, once the king of American roads, was suddenly facing extinction. By 1974, the GTO name was reduced to a trim level on the Ventura, a compact car that couldn't carry the weight of its heritage. And then, silence. For a decade, the name GTO disappeared. The streets got quieter. The horsepower wars turned into fuel economy discussions. Pontiac itself pivoted, chasing trends and survival in a shifting market. But legends have a way of returning. And in 1984, Pontiac tried something bold, something unexpected. They attempted to resurrect the GTO spirit, in Australia. That's right, the next chapter in the GTO saga didn't begin in Detroit, it began down under. In 1984, GM's Australian division, Holden, launched a car that was never officially badged as a GTO but carried its soul. It was called the Holden Commodore SS. A four-door sedan powered by a muscular V8 engine, designed for local racing and performance enthusiasts. Its chassis was tuned for sharp handling, its powertrain meant for hard acceleration. This Commodore became the spiritual successor to the muscle car, lightweight, aggressive, and focused on raw driving excitement. Pontiac engineers took notice. Meanwhile, in America, Pontiac was in search of identity. The Firebird was carrying the performance banner, but the brand wanted something more. In the background, GM executives were watching Holden's progress with keen interest. They saw a platform that could potentially bring back the GTO's soul, but the timing wasn't right. The world wasn't quite ready. Still, something was brewing beneath the surface. In the early 80s, Pontiac began experimenting with performance trims on its existing lineup. The Grand Prix, the 6000 STE, and the Firebird Transom all featured hints of GTO heritage, hood scoops, bold graphics, throaty engines, but none wore the name. None dared to awaken the full legacy. That honor would have to wait a little longer. By 1984, though, the winds were starting to shift again. Enthusiasts were calling for power. The Japanese invasion was in full swing, but American carmakers were beginning to rediscover their identity. The second-generation GTO would not be a direct follow-up in the traditional sense, but its DNA, its muscle, its defiance, would live through a series of experimental performance models that paved the road back toward a true resurrection. One of those came in the form of the 1984 Pontiac Grand Prix Brome, a car that, while luxurious on the surface, offered an optional 305 cubic inch V8 and rear-wheel drive, harking back to the classic formula of power over polish. It wasn't labeled a GTO, but for those who remembered what the badge stood for, it was clear Pontiac was testing the waters. Throughout the mid-80s, Pontiac's design teams looked for ways to blend performance with modern needs. Computers were entering the tuning world. Aerodynamics began replacing brute force. But deep within Pontiac's design rooms, the heart of the GTO still beat. Engineers obsessed over torque curves, weight distribution, and the roar of a properly tuned exhaust. They weren't just trying to build cars, they were trying to recapture a feeling. While 1984 didn't mark the official return of the GTO nameplate, it represented a turning point in its evolution. It was the year the muscle car spirit began to whisper again inside Pontiac. The Grand Prix in Bonneville began to see performance enhancements. The